Hi, Chris. Just a test mic. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, cool. All right, I think we'll just start. Thanks everyone for joining this session. Special thanks to BCA and Singapore Polytechnic for hosting this. So my purpose here today is to actually give an education to everyone who would like to understand how generative design works and how you could actually collaborate via the switch my video here for those of you who may not know me. So I'm John, John Rivas, one of the technical specialists in Autodesk. So for the next 30 minutes, I'll just cover about how you could actually explore generative design options through cloud. So with generative design and also with automation in Revit, it actually helps us to automate certain workflows within the Revit application. So automation is a crucial part in the documentation process because most of the time we encounter a lot of issues of time spent in using the commands within Revit. So automation and optimization tools within the Revit application helps us to identify different design problems that we face in Revit And like in any application, documentation is the most crucial step. So identifying the repetitive task that is required is can help us identify on what kind of productivity that we could do. So these points are actually some of the examples on how automation tools can help us in our daily workflow. So let me just quickly go through what is it about, what is automation tools within the Revit application, and some of the use cases on how you could use it with the Revit application. So back in 2014, we have actually introduced Autodesk Dynamo to our community, to our Revit users. So Autodesk Dynamo is a visual programming application where you combine different series of nodes to actually to come up with your own recipes so that you can perform mundane tasks in Revit. So basically the starting point here is that once you have require you to become a programmer per se, but as long as you're able to understand on how to connect different nodes to different basically nodes as well, you could come up with your own scripts to automate repetitive tasks. So from the list of conversations that we had with our customers, there are many examples on how you could use Revit and Dynamo. So when you're using Revit and Dynamo, most of the time architects use this for geometry creation. So if let's say if you're trying to create an organic shape of a structure, or it could be a bridge, or it could be a particular facet of that building. So geometry creation is one of the key things on how Dynamo is being used. And for detailed design and documentation, creation of family instances are essential when you're using Dynamo because it helps you to automate placements like in this example, like lighting fixtures, or it could be like MEP ducting, or it could be any components that you would like to automate placing it in Revit. So another instance here is that you could also populate certain data to the Revit application. So if let's say you have any properties, like for example, it could be a location or it could be a particular material to an existing Revit family element. Instead of manually placing them within Revit, you could actually use this in Dynamo to capture all of the different elements that you have in Revit. And then in one shot, you could easily populate all the information that you would like to place inside the Revit families. So you don't have, you can actually use Excel data as well as a data entry. So instead of like manually typing in, and if you have those information already in, let's say in Excel, you can just simply copy that information from Excel and pasting it in the Revit application through your Revit families. So one of the examples here in terms of code checking, so one of the use cases here in Dynamo is to identify like headroom clearances. So if let's say if I'm designing let's say a stair and I would like to check whether there's any allowable headroom clearance, let's say to a ceiling, or it could be let's say an element within the building, you could actually use Dynamo to do a ray trace, meaning from let's say from that level of that particular stair, you could do a ray trace using Dynamo. And it can tell you like exactly of like how long is that ray trace. And then once you have done a ray trace, it can report back whether do you have enough clearances. So with Dynamo, you can actually go back to your Revit application, make certain amendments that is needed, and then you can rerun that Dynamo script so that it could check for potential headroom clearances. So if let's say If it is beyond like 3 meters or more, then it will highlight as green. But if let's say if it is less than 2 meters, then it could highlight as red. So in this way, Dynamo can actually report back all the headroom clearance for every step that you have for your stairs. So it could be applied to different types of use cases as well. Like right now in our COVID situation, if let's say if you want to identify like spacing between desks, that could be applied as well. So if let's say if you're trying to really lay out your office, let's say your office space, and you would like to understand like this, what is the minimum distance from desk to desk, you could use that with Dynamo. So from parametric modeling, what we have done like about 20 years ago, where we introduced Revit application, we actually have moved into visual programming way back in 2014. So for us in Autodesk, our objective or our vision is to provide tools for architects and engineers to help them provide different types of option generation tools and design optimization tools. And moving forward into the future, we are actually looking into machine learning as well. It's not to replace architects and engineers, but just to make them more efficient in their when they're making decisions in their designs. So what we have actually introduced starting this May, this release of AEC Collection 2021. So from Project Refinery, so it is a beta application that we have introduced for option generation and design optimization. So now it actually has graduated as a commercial application. So we call this generative design for Revit. So if let's say if you're on active subscription within the AEC collection, so you get this automatically in the 2021 release. So if you're using an older version of Revit, and you want to use generative design, you may still want to install the Project Refinery from the beta site. But if you're using the newer versions, which is Revit 2021, it's already installed with the application as well. So if, let's say, if you're an existing customer for the AEC collections, you will automatically see Revit and generative design in the current version, which is 2021. So it's part of your entitlement as an Autodesk customer if you're using AEC collection. So whenever you install the Revit application, it is already installed with the Revit application in 2021. So within Revit, if you go to the Manage tab, when you actually select Create Study, it will ask you to sign in with your user credentials. So the steps here is that you just need to select Create Study, and then you sign in with your user account. And then from there, you can just simply use the Dynamo scripts that you have exported out from Dynamo. And the intention here is that you don't have to actually open up Dynamo in order to use generative design. So Dynamo actually works within the background when you're using generative design, but the main engine is Dynamo, right? So the key thing here is that actually share your scripts to the team. So for those who are not familiar with Dynamo, they could use generative design even though without using the Dynamo application. So to give you what we have actually introduced starting from this year. So Dynamo and Revit actually comes along with the Dynamo 2.5. So one of the recent changes that we work packages, it tries to understand what are the missing work packages or packages in Dynamo that you haven't installed, and then you can install directly from there. So it's really useful if, let's say, if you downloaded a Dynamo script from the internet, and let's just say you try to run it and use it within Revit, then you can actually install them easily using this workspace reference. So it's a great time saver and help for those who actually uses Dynamo scripts from other Dynamo users. So to give you a context of what generative design is, so when, as I mentioned, when you go to the Manage tab and when you click Create Study, by default, we provide three different scripts that you could use in Revit 2021. So the idea here is that once you have a working Dynamo script, and you can actually publish this as a generative design study, so you could actually run different types of iteration of your design directly within the Revit application. So you don't have to actually use Dynamo to run this script. So you can do this directly within the Revit application. So the difference here is that before you have to go back to Dynamo in order to run those scripts. But now in 2021, you can instantly create those elements within the generative design tools. So if, let's say, this example, when you're creating an office space layout and you want to use generative design to study the different orientations of the, let's say, the desks, you can do it directly with Revit. And then once you have when you are satisfied with that kind of layout, you can just simply create those elements directly in the Revit application. So the steps are very straightforward when you're using generative design. The intention here is that you can select different elements within Revit directly. So it could be a space, it could be an edge, it could be a model line, depending on the type of script that you would like to run. And the idea here is that you need to actually set different types of goals and constraints based on the script that you are trying to run. So you may need to familiarize yourselves as well on what are the type of selections that needs to be done for every generative design study. So once you're actually able to select the generate button, you can actually come out. So basically it will run in the background. It will try to create different sets of outcomes for you for your selection purpose. So you have different sets of options. Whether you want to randomize or optimize, you can specify that when you actually, let's say, set up your study. And within generative design, you can track the different set of results. Like in this example, the results could be, let's say, desk row rotation, spacing between rows, average distance to exits, views to outside, or number of desks. So these are some of the outputs that you could define within your generative design study. And then from there, you can specify like your actual goals. Like the goals here could be the total number of desks if you want to optimize it, the number of views, and also the distance to exit. So as you actually identify or pick, let's say when you pick a specific outcome, it will try to provide you the different outputs within your generative design study. And once you have completed them, when you select Create Revit Elements, it will automatically create the elements based on the type of desk that you would like to apply in your Revit application. So other examples that we have for generative design is it could be for conceptual design or conceptual massing. So if, let's say, if you want to understand, let's say, the total height of the building, if you want to understand, let's say, the GFA of a particular building, you could actually optimize, let's say, the height of the building, or for example, the number of levels. So you could do this within generative design. And as you can see here, when you actually play with the glyphs here, it tells you to actually, you can narrow down your selection. Like, for example, if I want to capture the GFA, let's say, of maybe 10,000 square meters. So once you refine your study, the outcomes will narrow down as well. So once you actually select Create Revit Elements, you will be able to generate the actual massing within Revit. So it could be creation of levels, or it could be creation of massing. So those are some of the examples on how you could actually use generative design during the conceptual design stage. Another example here, if let's say for creation of different views. So I think one example that I could think of here is if let's say if you're placing like cameras, the CCTV cameras, let's say on a particular wall, and you would like to understand what is the coverage area of that CCTV camera. You could use generative design in terms of like number of cameras placed, the angles of where the camera is positioned. So those are some of the practical applications on how you could use generative design during the design phase, right? So if let's say if you want to narrow down, let's say the type of result, like for example, number of cameras, you can easily see that from the outcome and then establish the creation of cameras within your Revit project. Another example here is like, for example, creating lighting elements or lighting fixtures within the Revit application. So if let's say you want to generate, let's say the different lighting layouts, you want to understand in a space of a room, how many lights that you would like to actually place. You can understand, like, for example, the number of, let's say the amount of luminance inside that room. So if let's say you want to harness as well the rendering functions within Revit, you could do that also with the Revit applications once you selected the number of lights that you have created in the Revit application. So from generative design, let's move on in terms of redefining the collaboration between work groups. So I think in our current situation right now, the key importance of having like seamless collaboration is to be able to transfer information in a seamless way without the need of using different tools. So I think you guys might be working from home today, and same as me. So if let's say if I need to collaborate with another individual, establishing a common data environment for that project is crucial to make sure that everyone is updated with the recent updates in their project. So that's why we introduced BIM 360 as a solution for business continuity planning. For users to be able to share their design files to any project stakeholder without the need of accessing their network or their firewall. So within BIM 360, we provide like a common data environment throughout the entire project. So starting from design to construction. So to give you an idea about the bird's eye view on how the collaboration works, you could actually start with your own internal collaboration with your own local teams, even though that you are your Revit application. So when you collaborate with other external stakeholders, when you review and create your comments, you don't actually have the need of opening up the Revit application. So you can just use your mobile device, or in this case, you could use your web browsers to actually open up that BIM model and create those reviews and comments directly. So you don't actually have the need of opening the Revit application just to open the Revit file. So other stakeholders that does not have a Revit application will be able to open this anytime, anywhere. And by the time that you get their approval and you want to share with external stakeholders with your, let's say if you're working with an M&E, another M&E consultant or a CNS consultant, you can actually create a package alongside with the other tender specs, let's say for the project, and you can start collaborating, let's say even though they're outside of Singapore or within Singapore, you can start collaborating with your own, with other external teams. So before, you may need to actually like submit files or share links via Dropbox or other platforms. So what we have introduced in BIM 360 is for you to be able to collaborate in one cloud space. And the workflows are pretty configurable on the fifth step here. It allows you to actually define your own approval workflows internally, or it could be externally as well. So you can configure workflows if it is related internally within the team, or if it requires an approval from the client or other consultants. So you can easily configure that with the BIM 360 application. So I created a short video here on how you could actually integrate generative design and BIM 360. So what I've done here is that I have a Revit project where my goal here is to actually maximize the desk count within a space. So what I could do here is that I could actually generate different design options easily with the Revit application. And what I can do here is that I can actually play with the charts. So depending on the type of information that I would actually want to see. And then from here, I can actually identify the total number of desk counts based on the different outcomes that I have here. So you can see here, okay, I've optimized this space. What I wanted is actually I want to generate like 40 desks in that space. So what I could do here next is that if I want to share it to other stakeholders in the project, I can actually synchronize directly to the cloud through BIM 360 so that I don't have to actually upload it in any cloud storage applications. So I can do that directly from Revit to BIM 360. So if another stakeholder actually wants to open up BIM 360, all they have to do is to open up their web browsers, generate markups. So this is where the collaboration begins. So you don't have to actually send emails back and forth using your Outlook. So what you could do here is that you can simply mark up directly with the Revit application. So like in this case, I just created a markup to note of what are the things that I've seen in this design. So if I want to actually create or notify a certain individual, what I could do here is that I can create an issue, define the type of issue, whether if it is related to client specifications or code compliances. So I could simply assign this to individuals and specify like due dates that, hey, you have to fix this issue at this specific period. So going back here in generative design, I can go back, I could rerun the study, I can do more stuff, like if I want to recreate more design options, I can actually do that directly within generative design. So what I'm doing here now is that I'm just exploring the different outcomes based on the comment that I have seen. So if let's say the comment there was that there is some spaces that I didn't utilize, so I could specify like that specific instance and save it again through the cloud. So BIM 360 in Revit actually tries to understand the different changes and uploads only the deltas. So once you actually update a specific model in BIM 360, we have these tools that enables you to actually collaborate, compare the different versions. So it could understand what are the removed elements, so you can filter that. And you can also identify like what are the different changes that has been done on the desk. So once you're able to compare the different versions, let's say as a consultant, instead of sending emails back and forth, what you could do here is that you can create an activity list where all the communication based on that particular issue is maintained in one space. So in the event that you would like to actually pass it on to another project stakeholder, or let's say you're on leave, you can still communicate directly, or let's say go through the different types of communication that has happened in the project. So with BIM 360, you can actually save all your Revit files or AutoCAD files or even your project documentation directly on the cloud, without having to install any application. So it just runs directly on your web browsers, and then the communication actually happens within the interface. And you don't have to actually use your email applications just to send emails back and forth. So what BIM 360 provides is a form of notification, just to notify you that if there's any comments that has been added in this particular issue. So very useful tools that we would like to actually tell you about. And with the generative design, which is actually has graduated, and now we have introduced this in the Revit 2021 release, customers can start to enjoy the benefits of generative design in Dynamo. So just to wrap up, if you haven't heard about Autodesk Dynamo and generative design, I encourage everyone to actually go through these links. So we have this website, dynamobim.org, that talks about the very fundamentals of Dynamo. Some of the topics that I've covered here today is also within this website. And also, if you would like to learn the fundamentals on Dynamo, you can go through the primer. And if you want to understand how generative design works as well, so you can go to dynamobim.org, so you can look for the refinery primer or generative design primer. So for BIM 360, there are lots of content that are available in our website as well. And also, if let's say if you have BIM 360 and you would like to understand the many modules that it has, you can also learn it from the online tutorials that we have in our website as well. All right. So that ends my presentation. If you guys have any questions, you can just simply like type it in the conversation box or the chat box. Okay, so for Pong's question regarding Project Refinery, yes, the Project Refinery is the beta name. So now it has been changed as a commercial release. So the name now is Generative Design for Revit. So this was released starting May this year. So again, for those who are who has an AC collection license, you get an entitlement for Revit 2021. So I would suggest you guys to actually go through your desktop application. If you're not familiar with the Autodesk desktop app, you can actually find your latest entitlements using this. So if you don't have, so this only works if you have admin rights in your machine. So if you could not install, make sure that you seek assistance from your IT team. For K, I think if you have already an AC subscription, you would need to subscribe also to BIM 360. So it's actually separate right now. If you would like to have a further conversation to this, I'll just leave my my email here, and then you can just reach out to me later. So I'm just typing in my email in the chat box. So in case you have any questions regarding BIM 360, just feel free to reach out to me. So for Kiosk question, generative design still requires Dynamo. So the main backbone is still Dynamo. So if let's say if you're using generative design, you don't actually have to open Dynamo just to use generative design. So it still requires Dynamo though. So the main backbone of your generative design scripts is still Dynamo. All right. If you guys still have further questions, you can just feel free to continue to type in the chat box. I'll be still within the session throughout the entire afternoon. And I'll hand it over to the next presenter. Thank you very much for your attention.
All right, thank you, Sean. Let's invite next presenter, this Ping from CPG. So, Pile, you can go ahead and share your screen.
Hello guys, can you hear me? Mic check. Mic testing. Oh, great. Thanks. Thanks for confirmation. So without further ado, let me have an introduction of myself. My name is Ping Lei. I'm currently a Senior Architecture Associate from CPG Consultants Private Limited. Just a little bit about my company. CPG was known as the former Public Works Department of Singapore. It was under Temasek Holding. It was incorporated in 1999 and later renamed as PWD Corporation. Before it became CPG Corporation in 2002, a year later, it became part of the Downer Group. It's an Australian company. So in 2012, which is the year I joined CPG, the ownership of CPG Corporation Group was transferred to CCTC, which is short for China Construction Technology Consulting Corporation Limited. While it still remained the corporation's strong Singapore core, so the Singapore identity has never changed. We have the headquarters in Singapore locally. We have 12 overseas offices in China, India, Vietnam, the Philippines, and the UAE. CPG Corporation has received numerous Singapore and international awards for its works, which span over 36 countries. Sorry, I should have shown this image probably just now. Then you can see quite a few well-known local projects. There are conserved buildings, border checkpoints, and some legal buildings, like the State Courts and the National Courts. Then also we have to mention about Gardens by the Bay and the Jurong Lake Gardens. And which we didn't show in this slide is that we still have some quite famous projects as NCID, which is short for National Center for Infectious Diseases, Ng Ting Fong General Hospital, Kudaiba Hospital, which have functioned very tremendously, contribute to the nation in this critical period of COVID-19. Recently completed Yunowa Junior College at Bishan, and currently we're also working on Mandai Rainforest Park, which is actually known as expansion to the Singapore Zoo. All right, that's so much about CPG. So before we talk about my main topic, Python, I would like to share a bit of my past works just to spice out the topic a bit more. Some of my past works, probably I only spent a few minutes on each top project. Before I decided to pick up Python, I worked on some design competitions. This is the project in Nanjing, which is design competition entry. We won over the local competitor. The metaphor was using calling dragons and crouching tigers, with a unique description about Nanjing's topography ever since the Three Kingdom dynasty. So the metaphor later will transform into the form of the podium as well as the towers. So if you can see that the tower will represent the calling dragons and the podium is a approaching tower. So back to the topic of computer design. The techniques we use, right, is actually called image mapping. If you see the bottom left-hand corner, which is we call it a tessellation pattern. Tessellation as in the pattern will be repeated continuously, both horizontally and vertically. So these strips of a pattern will become the pattern wrapping around a tower. So we set up a grid about 6 meter by 6 meters, which is just formed nicely about the nice grid lines of the building itself. Then we actually locate the center point of each grid and project the image down and extract the degree of whiteness and become a numerical value. And we can use the value to extrude based on the attributes, right? This new attributes is the whiteness. Of course, we have to do some sort of control to truncate it in a very controlled way. So the maximum extrusion of the building facade is 3 meters. They will be scaled down every 600. So when it's complete zero, which is complete dark in the sense, they become a no extrusion, which is the clear glass you see in the pattern. So those extrude patterns also use the image mapping technique for the second time, which to form a free pattern, which actually also use the image mapping techniques. Project which I did with CPG as much earlier. This is in 2012, late 2012. It's a design competition entry still. So the project site is in between the Metropolitan building, if not wrong, and is in front of the current MOE HQ. This building is built along a very narrow street. The challenge was that we are given not much time for design. So what's the best way to present an idea of knowledge and education? So, and this is named after a great man, Dr. Goh Keng Swee. So we thought of the idea of a growing tree of knowledge, right? So then we also have this idea of a green canyon, which would be the transition and big space between the existing MOE HQ and this new building extension. So once again, you probably can tell that I actually used the image mapping techniques one more time. That time was done in Grasshopper and Rhino, so you can see a very simple script can do such magic. So I kind of animated in the Dynamo. There's Houdini, which is I used for later part of the design. So moving on, because this project was still in 2012, we still have the opportunity to use Ecotech. So people, yeah, so Ecotech is a very wonderful software by Autodesk again. We use the function called insolation, which is short for incident solar radiation simulation to analyze how much of heat the facade will receive. Then from the study, we converted the data into different categories of free pattern for the panels. Okay, this design competition actually took place before just now the Nancy project. That's why it gives a bit of trial round. Okay, it's good to mention that this competition lasts about 4 weeks. So I still have managed to squeeze a bit of time for this sky factor study, which is to understand how much the sky each panel can see. And this actually, despite this time constraint during the design competition, this is a very quick study just to confirm our concern about this building with narrow to the HQ. And this is probably one of the reasons that this project has never been, the construction hasn't been built. Although we didn't win the competition, but I think there's some reason behind the choice of the site, right? All right, so quickly moving on to two more very short ones. This is the Adala Design Competition entry for Singapore Chinese Cultural Center, which we didn't win either, but I think it's a very interesting project to show. The idea of Chinese elements actually is very evident from every corner of this design. And the idea, because we do have a car park on the second story, how to make sure this ventilated facade is naturally ventilated space is not so monotonous. So the idea is also, once again, the image mapping comes into mind, and do a quick mapping of the Chinese painting. But in this case, we actually did something different. We used the attribute, which is the degree of whiteness, as a parameter for the rotation of the ventilation blocks. So the ventilation wave forms a quite nice waveform on the facade. You can see in the top right-hand corner is about how the painting has been transferred into a facade. A little bit of tips on the right-hand side is that we trying to bring the element of bamboo screen into the project. That's why we actually randomize the height and the position and the angle of the inclination of the bamboo. You can see in this view. One last project I want to show, which is probably marks the end of all the competition entry while still involved in the early years of CBG, which is at the Ningbo University Mason campus. It's a very large project, which we work tirelessly day and night for almost 1.5 months. Probably you can see this is actually for School of Maritime. So there's a very strong image or association with anchor, with ships, with sea creatures. One of the actually building I was in charge is a maritime museum. So this maritime museum, it has a very interesting trying to create a shell, because it's supposed to be pretty much inspired by Guggenheim Museum to have the ramp. So this is spiral continues. Then at the bottom, at the end of the trip would be an escalator, also sorry, a vertical lift to transfer the visitors down. It was a very interesting try, but we couldn't. I mean, I was the modeler for this one. Then I realized there's a challenge in complying all the codes for accessibility. Then I was actually put aside and said, yeah, maybe I should understand more about how the building works and what's the building. So it comes to the main topic of today. So, okay, I get into Python because of this first Python course from NUS and the ISS. A big shout out to BCA because this is an industry-wide initiation is by BCA, and it was actually done this project was done in September 2017. I recently picked up the script and I just found out that actually there's quite a room for improvement. So I'd like to share today with the audience that how this thing can help me to check the fire code compliance, but in particular is a fire safety setback. Hence the project title, Project Backfire. So I took the definition of backfire from the dictionary. It's a fire started deliberately to stop the progress of approaching fire by creating a burn area in its path. This is technique we actually can see from the news that's adopted in Australia early this year because of the wild forest fire. And I think that the gist of it is to have a safety setback. So if one side of the buffer zone catch fire, the fire will not spread into the other one. Also, just a play of with words, which is fire and setback. That's why there is actually a project of backfire. While the project during the course, we actually before the course actually took place, there was actually a news report of one of the industrial building. There's actually an explosion, so there was debris flying everywhere, and this is an online image. It's actually how fast or how far a fire can spread into the next building if the safety distance is not ensured. Because this script was still done in 2017. All right, so the fire code 2018 was not in force yet, so I still took the 2013. So for the rest of the presentation, we'll probably follow the same requirement for 2013. I seek for your understanding on this part. So the idea is to have okay. So basically, how far the building should be separated from one another is based on the percentage of protected openings on one side. Then there's a table specified in Appendix B to specify the requirement. Sorry for the wording. So this is the table you should look like. There are two tables actually, Table 1 and the Table 2, but they are only different. They only differ by different types of buildings because there are all total. There are 8 purpose group in total. You can actually integrate as different types of buildings. All right, because most of the building falls into the category of in Table 1, so I use Table 1 primarily for this exercise. So the idea is to identify which table you use. So we already done that. So the next one we should to check the idea of enclosing rectangle. Don't worry, I will explain the idea of enclosing rectangle later on in the next slide. So it's the height of the enclosing rectangle. The third one is to check the width of enclosing rectangle. Follow me still. So the fourth one is to calculate the percentage of opening. Then you will have the vertical projection and go to the row. You find out how many meters is the safety setback. So that's the gist of it. Okay, let's go to some illustrations. Okay, some of the buildings they can normally buildings are compartmentalized by floors because floor is actually non-combustible materials, most of it. If we have a very high atrium, so the compartment can actually go span the 2 levels. That's the idea of this diagram. All right. So some of the building facade materials, let's say some panels, aluminum, even basically some of the facade materials will not be comprised of non-combustible materials, so they are not considered protected openings. So they are unprotected in the sense. So this is a very good image, very simple one to understand. All right. So it is supposed to be a protect structure. If you can take right hand side as a staircase, this as a staircase, right? And each rectangle in the center will become will consider as a window. So there are 8 windows, each measured 2 by 2. But the enclosing rectangle idea is not to take the top and bottom, because just now we actually noticed that enclosing rectangle follows increment of 3 meters in terms of height, and the width actually will follow the category. Even from the first top left-hand corner of the first rectangle to the bottom right-hand corner of the rectangle, it will measure as 5.5 by 11 meters. But this is not the rectangle enclosing rectangle we're talking about. While we're checking out the table, you should follow the next available height, which is 6 meter. And in the table, you actually will see is 12 meter in terms of the width. So this is the enclosing rectangle. Then the idea is to add up every single unprotected openings, the accumulated area, aggregate area of the unprotected opening, and divide by the area of enclosing rectangle. Then you have a percentage. Then check out the table again. You'll give you the safety setback. For people who are very familiar with the fire code, you probably can understand what I'm trying to say. If you don't understand the explanation, don't worry, I can show you in the live demonstration. All right. So, okay, this is the idea. Okay, assume rectangle, enclosing rectangle is 5 by 5. To use the nearest corresponding enclosing rectangle from table 1 of fire code is 6 by 6, so 36 square meter. That's the denominator, right? So assuming unprotected opening of this 4 hashed area is 14.4. So we use 14.4 divided by 36, we'll get about 46%. Okay, here comes a bit of, I would say, debatable points. Normally, if I were the QP, I would suggest to use the 50%. But in this illustration, you use a 40%. This is quite I would say, because if you use 50%, the safety setback is 2.5. But based on the expansion notes from the fire code 2013, you use the lower one. So it should round down instead of round up. So it's 2 meters. But the idea still follows the same, right? Okay. How this Python script will comes into place in Rhino. Why Rhino itself is not sufficient enough? Because Rhino, we have a Rhino script released as early as Rhino 4, or even the earlier version, which I have no collection of the history. We can also use Grasshopper to come up with the scripts. The beauty of Rhino is that actually it has Iron Python components, which is Python embedded within Rhino, if my understanding is correct. Why I use Python is because in Python there's there's one thing we actually have to highlight is actually the .NET framework is coming from Microsoft for Windows platform. The .NET framework includes a large class library called Framework Class Library and provides language interoperabilities. Each language can be code written in other language existing several programming languages. And the programming written for .NET framework excludes in a software environment. Basically, it's something called Common Language Runtime (CLR). It's inevitable here is that it's actually acronym Common Language Runtime. So with these CLR components, we can actually call and open an Excel application within the Python script. So this is the beauty of it, because if not, I think by right, Rhino is not supposed to open Excel only. So that's the beauty of it. Okay, so with this part, I already show you the first 10 rows of the script. It's actually the setup for the entire script. So we have to call in the Rhino script, have to import a library. So give a short name as RS. and import Rhino and the script context. So these are the necessary ones. Yeah, then GUID. For the second part of the .NET, I have to call in CLR. That's why I actually have to add reference to Microsoft. So later on, I can use this function to call in Excel. All right. And I would like to do a short demonstration. Okay, so I'm going to open the Rhino. Oh, by the way, I have to mention, initially I will try to use this project which I work on, this Euro car workshop. So later on, I transfer the geometry in the Rhino. So I have isolated those what they call it, subjects of windows. These are the louvers as well as the openings for the canting block, which is very dangerously close next to the common boundary. So the fire safety setback is always an issue we have to look out for. This project was running on the design build, very fast track project places. Then every time we have to change the facade for the window opening, it becomes an issue. All right, so in Rhino, I'm about to open the Python script, right? Already opened it. So, okay, I'm going to run it like this. So there's a pop-up say select coplanar curves, which means the curves are on the same plane. These are the louvers. If you notice that every time I click one, the louver becomes, the line becomes in red color, which means I already highlighted it. And every time I click one, there's a GUID pop-up, which means, yeah, if it's called unique identification, right? So every GUID is different from another. Let's just complete the selection by selecting the last opening and press enter if done. If you notice that, oh, there's a flash of Excel. I know the screen is a bit lag, but I just want to describe what I see on my screen. There's a Excel opened up and closed. All right, so they pop up the screen again. So I can minimize it. I go back to the command line again. So there's actually a kind of history of the text which I leave behind. It says the total window area is 17.5 square meters, and they create a mesh, which is this cyan color, which is kind of that enclosing rectangle that we probably can see. And let's check out the table is 3 meters. Enclosing, okay, it comes the interesting part. The script tell me the width of enclosing rectangle is 30 meters. The width, the height is where? The height is 3 meters. Because the floor to floor height is not very much. All right, so the percentage opening is 19%. So you're going to check out the table, and it's going to give its setback is 1 meters. Okay. Let's just have another. Okay, that's if that's provided if if that's simple. What if we have a scenario of this? We have so many openings. Although maybe the wall is on a non-composite material, it's actually RC wall, but we do have reinforced concrete wall. But we do have these openings. These are it almost render the wall as very porous. So let's see if we can run a script in this scenario. It will definitely show different results. All right, because if I have a measurement here, the windows is about almost 9 meters, and the length is probably not evident here. The Excel pop up and close again. So we check the record here. Okay, so the total window area is such 82 point something square meters. The height of the enclosed rectangle is 9 meters. That's reasonable because the windows is 8.54 and the width is 29. Yeah, so it's whole number, which means we actually call out from the correct content of this Excel. So the percentage opening is 33%. The setback distance required is 5 meters. which makes sense because there are so many openings and the enclosure rectangle is much taller. That's why it requires a further setback. Okay, let's go back to the script proper. All right. Just now, which I showed is this project, which is not pretty much important in this presentation. It's located in Tanjung Penjuru. It's a warehouse. That's why the safety requirement for warehouse building and factory is very, very high. People who have done, if you are involved in any industrial project, you probably can understand what I'm trying to say. All right. So it starts with the line 18. For the next few minutes, if you don't mind, I'm going to go through some very dry stuff, which is how the script is like and explain why this thing has happened for things that you've seen just now. All right, I will start with empty curve collection, because when I start the selection of the process, right, it's all empty. Yeah. So and I'm going to pop out the notification in the interface by typing out, please select the coplane curves, press enter if done, which is quite familiar just now, right? So okay, so you see this is quite interesting because I use RS, which is Rhino Script Get Curve Project. These are the certain format that which we actually have to use. The force and force will indicate some attributes. This one you can easily check out from the Rhino Script, which I refer very often during this project. However, if new curve is none, it's going to break this because it's a while loop. It will continuously pop up this notification to request for a coplane curve to be selected until if it's a now it's a new entry, which is when I press enter, so it will actually end. So once it collects all the curves, while it's actually selecting the curves, I will actually pop up and print out the GUID of each newly selected curve. That explains why every time I select curve, there's a series of a string. Yeah, it just pop out. It's actually quite interesting combination of numbers and letters. So and for easy identification, for a second demonstration, because there are so many curves, I decided to include this line, which is not necessary, but it's just for easy identification. You can colorize every single curve that you selected. Because I use a true color 25500, so it's going to be highlighted in red, right? And in this slide, you probably can see the next line. Actually, I create a class in Python. Okay, how do we interpret it as a class? So you can interpret it as I create a new geometry in Rhino. It's a new type of geometry. So this windows becomes a new type of entity that has its own attributes. It has its own function. For example, the V box is its own function, and the total area is actually its own function. All right. So I actually assign a B box, which is stand for bounding box. Idea is actually to have all the curves collected. I create a enclosing, I would say, box around from the top left hand corner to the bottom right hand corner. So when this enclosing bounding box is done, I can identify what's the extreme top left hand corner and the right hand corner. This is the first step when I determine the enclosing rectangle. Total area, of course, is a function. It's easy to understand. Every time I select a new curve, I measure its curve area, and it's going to add up to the cumulative windows area. Next slide. And I create another second type of a function class, which is a new entity. It's called bounding rectangle, which is the one we need to check out in the table. So yeah, I'm going to still use the bbox function and measure the top left corner and right hand corner. That's what I'll be talk about. But when I come to generate this plane, which is we have to refer to the Rhino help file, which is explain what the individual Rhino script will help you to do. So for this one, I spent quite a lot of time to debugging until I found this wonderful diagram. It should tell you that if you want to know the sequence of the vertices, it should probably goes to 0, 1, and 1, 2. Because bounding box, it has 8 axes. Although all the curves are coplanar, right? Probably the 0 and 4 and 5 and 1 will be collapsed. Sorry, I shouldn't go for the details, but that's the idea of how to do the enclosing bounding boxes. So this is a function again, planar surface is going to create this to create the bounding rectangle, enclosing rectangle. All right. Okay. So window area sum. Okay, so maybe we can continue a bit more. Sorry, this stuff is a bit dry. I probably can explain in a second illustration. So window geometry is actually to call all the curves. Window area sum is actually to calculate all the total area. These are, okay, you notice that there's a dot and there's actually a extension at the back. There's a bracket, which means this is a method, or rather a function to this class. Yeah, because this window geometry is actually a collection under this class called windows, which I explained just now. So I'm going to print out some lines for me to understand. So once this is calculated, the total window area after it's all summed up is actually how many square meter per square. So this percentage dot 2f is actually to have two significant figures, because some of the numbers are quite long, and this is to call out a function for the B box to generate the extreme bounding box, and later on the B reg is actually the function which you defined earlier to get the enclosing rectangle. All right. Okay, so that explains those scripts until so far is all done in Rhino and with the help of Rhino script, right? So there's not much of Excel involved. And here comes the second part of the script. Then we have to call in Excel, right? Just now we already called in this library. So we're going to import Microsoft Office interoperability is short for Excel as Excel. So this is a short name for this function from now onwards. So just now why we actually be able to see Excel pop up is because under these attributes, I assign this Excel if it's visible as true. That's why this will make the Excel application visible to the user. You'll see a flash of it. Later on, why it disappeared? Because at the end of a script, I actually writing a line to close the Excel application. So this actually, I don't want to see any detail of Excel error. That's why this line is included. So I leave some comments here for me to easy to understand, and maybe it's easier for this explanation as well. Some of the lines are not required. Then I comment out, because this hashtag is actually a symbol for commenting. If they put a hashtag there, even this is a very legit command, it will not be executed, but it will treat it as comment. It's for information only. So I'm going to call out a workbook, which is that particular term for Excel file, right? Excel spreadsheets or even. So I open this is the file address, read only. So it's not going to edit anything in Excel, just to be safe on the side. So I'm going to choose a work set. Just now I have the bounding rectangle, which may not be the sweet whole number, right? So it's a 8.94 meters for the height. This is the mass. This is just the mass calculation. I'm going to run up. I'm going to divide the 8 point something by 3. I'm going to run up the number and give it a whole number times by 3. Because if you check the Excel, right, those bounding rectangle, the height is every 3 meter increment. There's actually 3 meters, 6 meters, 9 meters, all the way to 27 meters. So I'm going to pop out the idea that this height of the enclosing rectangle is 9 meters, right? So I'm going to check out the sheet name, which is should be a string. I convert the number into string, and it becomes plus an n. So it's 9 meter for the sheet name, or rather the tab. So we already opened a workbook. So I'm going to check out the worksheet, which is a tab named 9 meters. I will do a row count, how many rows and how many columns. Okay, this is not necessary. It's just for me to understand this is not empty. It's not an empty table. All right. So, for example, if we are looking at the 6 meter bounding rectangle height, this is the table you should supposed to receive, right? So if you're going to check the table already, I already identified correctly which tab to go. So now, next thing I need to check what's the width of the bounding rectangle, right? So because I have the intermediate, the enclosing rectangle bounding rectangle to work on, so I'm going to check the values. I'm going to compare every single one. I'm going to compare the columns, right? So if you're going to, is it bigger than 3? If not, I will start with the 3. If it's greater than 3, I'll continue checking one by one. So if it's 4.5, let's say, so you bypass number 3 and go to stop at 6. Then you check and return the enclosing rectangle width. So it comes to the correct tab, to the correct row. Now we need to work on the correct column. The column is actually determined by the percentage of opening. So we have to add up all the area of the windows and divide by the enclosing rectangle area. Easy, right? Because just now there's an example about like 14.4 square meters for the aggregate area for the windows. And it was actually example of the enclosing rectangle is 6 meters times 6 meters, 36. So it divided by, that is actually 46%. According to that, you have to follow the 40%, usually the 2 meters. So the percentage opening is also another pop-up which I'm trying to pop up to inform the user of this script. So the last one. So the setback distance, we start with 0 first. So that's how we actually check one, because the final figure in this table should be representing the figure for setback distance. So this is the figure I'm looking for. So I name it as a setback distance. So I'm going to check the row, the columns one by one. It starts with the first row, and it compare whether it's surpassing the percentage opening. If not, if it's still greater than percentage opening, we'll continue checking the next row. Next column, until a suitable figure is selected. So you break the for loop. So you print out the setback distance required and probably give the figure, so it complete the sentence. At the end of it, I'm going to close the workbook and do not save the change. Right. So yeah, correct. Close the workbook without saving the change, then exit Excel. So that's come to the stage of that. So we'll return to the script. Okay, some of the learning outcome which I as a very new learner for the script was actually always start small, because the problem in the real life project could be very, very complicated. That's why we have to take baby steps. Maybe just to have a simple model describing either of a similar nature, similar problem. That's what I showed in the second presentation, right? And it's very simple geometry. And the next key lesson which I learned by heart is to isolate the problem. For a longer time, I couldn't get the Excel reading, check out the table correct. So initially, I start with 2 scripts just to test out the second checking on the second script. And later, when both scripts are done, I combine the scripts. The reason for doing so is because if there are so many problems or errors in the same script, you can't identify them. The error will pop up for because the scripts are running in a sequence, right? it always pop out the earlier one, but you never know, maybe the downstream is another error. So it's always not to put the eggs in the same basket. The third point, which I think I would like to recommend, is to devise a check-in mechanism. Check-in mechanism is not to check whether you have done it correctly. It's just if you purposely make a mistake, it has done in purpose, the system will be robust enough to pop out, oh, there's an error, right? So I also pop out some like print to check whether it's empty sheets. So I have to pop out how many rows and columns in the table. And I will leave leave every comments and notes whenever necessary between the code lines of codes. So I leave a trail of breadcrumbs. So later it's easy for me to pick up and continue, even modify. Yeah. So of course there's already a system built up. So there are some libraries already in place. That's why you have to import, and you can actually make reference to some sample scripts.
Sorry.
Okay.
Hele,
Yes.
in the interest of time, is it possible for you to summarize in 1 minute's time?
Sure. I'll bubble to the end of this presentation, and the value add this one.
Thanks.
No problem. Yeah, it's interoperability because you can Excel different platform, different program from the platform. Flexibility, you can build out your own tools. Yeah, it's because if I say that there's so far no script, if I know to my knowledge, to check there, you can devise your own tool. Scalability, because you can actually build up this functionality as add a new function and becomes a more useful in the center. Future development, because just now I emphasized these planes have to be coplanar, but in actual projects, your building could be quite wonderful, right? You have an indentation recess in. So this actually projection, if it's further away from this reference plane, there's some reduction, right? A percentage reduction. If the facade is also inclined, it's not perpendicular or parallel to the reference line plane, then there's also a further deduction in terms of the calculation. There are rules and regulations and rather a calculation method to follow. So this could be a next step forward for if you want to perfect or even improve on this script. Last one, actually, if you have two buildings inside the same plot, there's always a conceptual idea of a notional boundary. So how to determine. So if the boundary is not fixed. So it comes to the end of my presentation. Sorry, I don't have extended screen, so I probably can't see much of the questions. Yeah. Do you guys have any questions? All right. It's a very nice crowd. Paul, thanks for suggestion. I think Python is very useful, but it just the learning curve is not that steep as compared to other programming languages. In terms of lessons, I think there are plenty of resources available online. True, right on inside with it. Thanks, Patrick. So the scripts probably cannot. It's not as easy because due to the limitation of platform, not many staff in my office use Rhino. Not to mention they're using Python. But I think it's actually if the workflow is almost the same because the logic is the same, I can move on to, let's say, a common platform like Revit, Dynamo, because I understand there's a components of plugin called PyRevit. I believe there's also abilities in Dynamo. We can embed some Python scripts, and I believe there's possibility to call in Excel inside Dynamo. So this still also will be another technical challenge ahead. Thanks, Gerald. Yeah.
All right. If there's no more questions from the audience, we will invite now Jeremy to pick up the next session. So Jeremy will be talking about computational BIM with cloud platform. Jeremy, you can share your screen. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, hi everyone. I hope everyone is able to hear me loud and clear. Great.
Yes, we can hear you.
Fantastic. Let me just share my screen. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Okay, great. Okay, so I would say good afternoon, everyone. So today I'm gonna just sort of share a little bit about some of the, or rather how people have been leveraging on cloud to help support them in terms of their construction. I think one is about not just about working together on a specific project, but also just to share with the existing change in landscape, especially in Singapore, right? How cloud has sort of stood out as one of the technology, right, that people has adopted to help them with their ongoing operations, right? So today I'll be covering total of 5 key areas, right? First, I'll do a bit of introduction about myself and my company. And then I will share a little bit about collaborating on cloud, how people has harnessed the power of cloud to adopt BIM for collaboration, all right? And then just to share also some of the myths, right? Just to also answer some of these questions that people have on using cloud for their different kinds of application or the different kinds of, I would say, data platform that they want to use, and share the light that, you know, cloud is not exactly the most expensive thing, and more importantly, how it can help you harness some data in your overall setup for your different projects. Okay? So, again, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeremy. I'm actually the country manager for Cloudmile Private Limited. So we are actually a cloud-born company. We are actually a premium partner with the likes of AWS, Microsoft, and also Google Cloud, right? We have about 70 plus certified engineer in the space of infrastructure and also machine learning. So we support about more than 350 customers regionally, right, across financial institution, healthcare, retail, and also not forgetting construction. So the key business that we're in basically is 2 parts. One is cloud computing. The other one is on artificial intelligence. So today, part of my presentation, you will also hear about how we use AI to help some of our construction customers, right, to overcome some of the difficulties or some of the inefficiencies that they face in the business. Okay. So to help adopt the different frameworks, right, or basically how we can help our customers adopt cloud and AI, Cloudmile actually have what we call our consulting digital factory, where we focus a lot on sharing with our customers, especially on cloud, on security and compliance, how if let's say you're on multi-cloud, basically how do you manage across multi-clouds, right? And then we also share about how operation, cloud migration is being done and affect your entire infrastructure. And then we also work with our customers on how they can leverage on the likes of IoT, you know, sensors to adopt new data, how to store all this data securely, and eventually build machine learning algorithms to help get better insights and improve the overall work efficiency for their day-to-day work. Okay, So over here, basically are some of the customers that we work with. So the likes of CTCI, which is an engineering company headquartered in Taiwan. We have Systic, Noble Group, and one of the more local customers on construction is BHCC Construction that I work with. And CloudMile also works very closely with the Singapore government in some of the initiatives that they are trying to leverage on data and also machine learning. Okay. So before I go and talk about collaboration on cloud, I just wanted to play a short video for everyone. Okay.
Well, next Friday's pitch. Tomorrow. Hey Google, join the meeting.
Okay, so if everyone would just take a look at this specific video, and I'm just not targeting at only the solution of using Google G Suite or even Office 365, right? So the purpose very much on this video is about collaboration. So many of the times when we talk about construction, right, people are very focused also on the project implementation of building up the whole construction building, multiple, I would say, stakeholders having to coordinate with one another to make the project come to life, right? But let's not forget as well, prior to, even getting the project, there will be a lot of business development that's being done. There will be a lot of sort of tender information that needs to be coordinated, right? So this sort of video sort of sums up how collaboration, right, ideally should look like in the space of construction, where I would say coordination is of much importance, right? So why is it so important to adopt a specific, I would say, solution to help you in terms of managing or navigating through a specific project, right? Because the first one is, I think it's very important, is the single source of truth. I think many of the times without, I would say, even cloud technology, right, or even a shared folder, people tend to have multiple versions of project management plan, safety checklists, or even, survey reports, right, as we move along or progress within the project. So having a good cloud and a single repository, right, allows version controlling that allows people to know where and when changes were made. Secondly, in terms of accessing the same information by everyone who's involved on the project is key. And I think more importantly, with a single repository, the search of the exact file, the content, and the knowledge is very, very important. So in terms of searching, right, perspective, we all know that Google is the king of search, right? So technology has come to a point whereby with a single, I would say, central repository when you're doing search, the Google search will even allow you to search into the document for specific keywords so that you don't even rely only on the word. You don't need to rely only on the file name, but also to allow you to search into the file itself, and more importantly, I would say images with specific textual information inside. Okay. Second thing is why cloud is such important in the space of working together and sharing information, right? Is the real-time updates. So I think looking at sort of like, I would say, the digital construction space, right? Real-time tracking is key. So if I'll just turn to everyone's attention, right, onto the little, I would say, GIF on the right-hand side of the screen, you will see that, as somebody or a project manager is working on a plan, right, you can see that information are being updated in real time, and people who are actually working on the same document are able to view what is happening and what's being updated. Secondly, assignment of tasks and command. So this is also very important, right? Especially for project managers who needs to manage a whole entire team. Real-time updates or assignment of duty can be done, right? Especially during handover where multiple, I would say, contractors, right, are being engaged to help work on any faults that's being found in terms of checking of the building or inspection of the building. Then this is where assignment and task commands is very key to make sure that we as contractors or even building developers are able to follow up with all these I would say faults on time, right? And more importantly, linking of data. So sometimes I would say data, or rather information, are being worked on in several documents, right? And some of this information actually overlaps. So having a good platform, or rather the Google platform, allows you to basically link all your different information together, and more importantly, update all the documents in real time, especially when the documents or information needs to be the same. Okay? So having said that, like I mentioned, time and time again that, on a project, there are multiple people working on the project at one time, right? But not everyone should have access, right, into the different documents or the information within the project folder. So within the same, I would say, central platform, you would have the ability to control who is able to see what, even down to who is able to make changes and who is able to share the content within the project team itself. Now, this will allow proper user segregation, and I think more importantly, allows compliance and who can see the information for the project. Okay? So, just to share a little bit about the kind of impact, right, that such, I would say, central or document sharing or management tool has held, is that recently we have worked with one of our construction customer, right? What has happened is that their on-premise server has came to end of life, right? And they shared with me, right? Hey, Jeremy, we have been purchasing a lot of servers to either put it in our office for our project managers or contractors to use. And one of the pain point that we have is that at the end of each project, right, if we do not sort of have another project that's coming, our servers are just being sort of placed and isolated within our storeroom or a data center, right? That's number one. The second pain point that they have is that, because they have multiple parties that they have been trying to coordinate, right, from third-party vendors to government agencies, they find it hard to have a single source of truth or consolidating this emails or even the documents, right? Because people are tracking everything through their emails. So having a single source of truth sometimes will be tough to monitor or to track. And the third pain point is that, project managers or even the employees of the project or the company come and go. So missing information is fairly normal due to employees leaving. So how do we ensure that data or details are still maintained or retained within the project or the company, even as the employees leave? And fourth one is basically tracking multiple emails, and coordinating with these multiple vendors. So I shared with them, right? Basically, there are many office tools out there, right? On top of just doing modeling, in terms of your day-to-day work as well. There's a solution that allows you to adopt a cloud-based office tool, right? And we shared with them that you can use files to store all your project-related data centrally with version tracking. And more importantly, you can have access control. So when a specific, I would say, employee were to leave the company, right, you can stop his access and grant this access to somebody who's taking over his job. So all the data is still within the central repository in itself. And more importantly, because it's cloud-based, right, that when the project has been done and dusted and completed, you can shut down the instance and you do not need to pay for the cloud utilization because it's very much a pay-as-you-go kind of concept, right? And what happened is that we actually run this specific project for about 12 months. And what we saw was that a 41% of more improved in efficiency, I would say overall in terms of searching for documents. Secondly, in terms of working on the files was much easier. And one of the biggest improvement was that shared with us by one of the project managers that, oh, I no longer have to download the file from a central repository, attach it into my email, and then send it to into the third-party vendor, coordinate again, and then update back into the SharePoint. Because now they are able to collaborate with their third-party vendor within the central repository on its own and allow them to start working on it and share with them the information and block them off for those other documents that they do not need to have access to, right? And it basically also helped them to save 22% of their total cost of ownership, right? Instead of having their servers, having a separate, I would say, AD, now they are able to control everything centrally through the project manager itself. So, of course, we are left with a very happy customer who adopted a cloud solution to help them sort of operate the entire project end to end. Okay, so moving on, just sort of want to share or debunk some of these myths, right, about adopting cloud, right? So, working in the cloud industry for the sort of last 12 months, right, some of the, I would say, potential customers that I've approached, right, one of the few is like, of why they don't move to cloud is, hey, why should I fix something that's not broken, right? Jeremy, tell me, on-premise server today, everything I manage is easy. The data all belongs to me. I can have full control and ownership of the servers. I can shut it down whenever I want. Why should I move to cloud, right? Second thing is, I'm not trained to leverage on cloud technology. So people always have this thinking that, hey, adopting cloud technology is very different from using your existing setup. So this is definitely not true as well, right? People who are being moved to cloud, we will say about 1 or 2 days of training, I will see my customers more or less ready to use a cloud platform because it's so easy to adopt. And with their knowledge about existing on-premise servers, they are able to adopt cloud very, very quickly. Third item is, what if my data gets compromised? So later on in my presentation, you will see how public cloud companies are helping, right, organizations to harden the data and more importantly, keeping them secure. And fourth and most important is I cannot predict how much I use and it may end up becoming very costly. So because cloud's commercial model is a pay per use, right? A little bit like, like using the electricity at home. If I were to ask any of you today, hey, would you know how much water bill or electricity you're going to be using next month? It's very hard for you to predict. So not to worry, there are actually sort of cost-effective measures and controls within the cloud platform that helps you to control your overall spend on top of the cloud technology. Okay? So first thing first is about cost, right? One of the barriers that people want to move to cloud is, hey, is it going to be very expensive? So what happens is that actually cloud is actually one of the more cost-effective measures of going into cloud. Firstly, cloud is the OPEX versus a CAPEX model. So every month as you pay, you use, you basically get billed on a monthly basis. So for a lot of construction companies, it's very, very relevant because construction companies, you yourself are also being paid only when you reach upon a specific milestone. So you do not have to fork up, sort of X dollars of cash upfront and maintain a set of server assets. And that will actually help you to improve your overall cash liquidity. So OPEX versus CAPEX is something that people need to consider, right? And that ties in very nicely with the pay-as-you-go. And when I say pay-as-you-go, why is it important also is because within the cloud technology, it will always come with sort of, I would say, alerts or reports that allows you to monitor your spend on cloud, right? And without any specific agreement or approval, right, the cloud companies are not able to charge you for excessive use of the cloud. So that's a very good, I would say, control in place. And third item is you see scale at speed. Now, sometimes, I would say some of the bigger construction companies that I work with, they would say, hey, I will need this amount of storage to help store my AutoCAD files or to store my construction related documents into my central servers or physical servers at the construction site. And then later on, they will call me say, hey, Jeremy, I have something very important. I need more storage. Are you able to send me my server in 2 weeks' time? And people who have been in the IT industry know servers don't just appear overnight. They typically take about 4 to 6 weeks to get delivered on premise to the customer's office. So what cloud has helped to improve is that you can scale at speed, right? It's as easy as if you see the little photo that I have on the bottom left-hand corner. It's just as easy as sort of moving that little blue button up and down. You'll be able to scale your entire virtual machine or your storage, right? Within 1 hour, you will see your storage being accelerated or being expanded for your construction project needs, okay? And last but not least is having the cloud allows you to have better visibility. Now, a lot of the times that, when going on premise, a lot of customers' common complaint to me is that they have to buy product A, they have to buy product B to basically help them, right, to monitor their overall CPU utilization, their storage utilization, or even in terms of security perspective, right, how secure is their overall setup. But with the cloud, it's basically an all-in-one platform that allows you as a construction company to scale at speed, and more importantly, for the project manager to have better visibility on who has access to the document, when they have access, what changes has been made, and in terms of an IT manager perspective for a construction company to have better visibility on the entire, I would say, compute power that they are using for each project centrally, right? So within a bird's eye view, if he has multiple projects, he has a single dashboard that allows him to view and control everything within the comfort of his home, especially during this period, right? So debunking about the cost that, hey, cloud is more expensive. So what happens is that Google has done extensive research, right, across 300 customers that they work with today. And then they realized that overall, in terms of the customer IT budget and spend, 52% higher of total cost of ownership for legacy on-prem use of data warehouse, of compute power, and 41% higher of total cost of ownership for legacy data warehouse, right? So compute is basically all the kind of virtual machines that you need to do to set up to help you access or run your specific applications. And people realize that they actually save about 52% across a 3-year period. And for your data and storage, people actually save about 41% across a 3-year period. So in terms of the overall perspective, the total cost of ownership is much cheaper. And some of the key areas which I would say IT managers have or construction companies have looked to save is, number one, they do not need a data warehouse, data center to help them store all their servers anymore because everything is through cloud. Secondly, they do not need to buy sort of physical servers and find a place to store them and do a setup, getting in engineers or consultants who come in to do the setup for them to rack and stack the servers anymore. And I think third and most importantly is that it's very scalable. They don't need to pay for, additional sort of people to include more storages, and it's pay per use, right? When the project is over, you can basically just turn down the entire VMs. Okay? Now, I would say one of the also more important, topics about cloud as people usually talk about is, hey, does the data belong to me? Is my data secure if I go onto cloud, right? So basically, for all cloud providers today, they take a 360-degree protection approach, right? The first one is in terms of security key. So security keys are when you have certain application or certain sort of third-party tool that you're using today and you want to store the data onto cloud. Specific handshake, specific encryption, and I would say access key are in place, right, to ensure that there's proper handshake, there's proper security, I would say guidelines built within the tools itself to enable everybody to be more secure in terms of your data setup, right? Thirdly is data loss prevention. So some, I would say, cloud providers in terms of your data setup, they will have hardening process in place, and I would say they are more importantly, they have the right firewalls and also, I would say, architecture in place to ensure that data is not lost. Okay, I will share with you a little bit of example on how the Singapore government later on has adopted that as one of their go-to. And fourth, and third and more importantly is that the system updates automatically in terms of our overall security support, right? So because security is something that is ever changing, hackers basically find new ways to compromise into the customers either information or basically do funny things to their application setup. So what we do is we ensure that system updates are being done timely and periodically to ensure that your entire, I would say, security setup is in place and is up to date. So security threat evolves every day. So even when it comes to, I would say, the hardware, right, that is being leveraged to set up your entire cloud platform, cloud companies are even investing money for their own chips to ensure that they are not easily compromised, right? They are built and operated and monitored 24/7 to ensure that your setup of your data is not being compromised by any third-party hackers, okay? So in terms of credential perspective, right, most cloud, I would say, public cloud providers, especially within the APAC region, they are all certified by OSPA or MTSC Tier 3, or from a global perspective, ISO certified, SOC certified, right, to ensure that your entire architecture is also safe, right? So much so that with all this certification in place and I would say right security posture in place, even our Prime Minister, Mr. Lee Hsien Loong, has also shared how this is important for even the government sector to adopt cloud, right? And in 2017, right, my memory serves me right, they have started to adopt what they call GCC, all right, or more popular known as the Government Construction Cloud. And by using the Government Construction Cloud, they have actually leveraged, or GovTech has basically built a framework that allows government agencies who want to adopt like smart nation philosophies or smart nation kind of application to build on top of this framework that is built on government commercial cloud to help them adopt a digital organization, right? So I'll just share a little small video clip that's done by GovTech, right?
So, you might be curious, how exactly does SGTS make this a reality? To begin, different agencies can now easily communicate using the same digital language. There, a scalable system is used to build, run, and manage apps. Data is made shareable through a secure channel. John only needs to key everything once, without the need to do it again, and again, and again. Making an early version of an app becomes easier and faster. What would have taken years before can now be rolled out in months. Bugs are squashed, and new features are pushed out quickly. John gets constant updates and knows that the service is always being improved. The system is able to tell what features John loves and what he doesn't love so much, so that the app and digital services we are building can continuously be a better version of itself. Add a secure login function here, a notification module over there, finishing touches, and voila! John has what he needs to make his life that much easier. The Moments of Life app is just one an example of how the government has re-engineered digital services around citizens' needs, making a more secure, consistent, and seamless experience across government digital services, so that John can focus on more important things in his life, like his family.
Okay, so this is a very good example of basically how even the Singapore government is adopting cloud, right? So another very important topic that we want to discuss about is that I think when Gartner basically did the research, right, the construction industry is actually one of the top industry that generates most data in a day, but they are not leveraging enough on the data that's being presented to them to improve your existing, I would say, construction process, right? So I would say 4 key pillars in which data are being projected today by the construction industry. Firstly, in terms of data centralization and sharing, that's where basically data is being exchanged, right, between, I would say, third-party contractors and also the government, or I would say managing agencies to help facilitate the entire project. Second pillar of data is basically IoT or integrating sensors, right, through your construction sites, or maybe even through your day-to-day operation of heavy machineries, right? Third is maybe even anyone who has subscribed to data analytics. And fourth, which is also your business continuity tools like Office 365 or G Suite. Now, with this rich and abundance of data, right, the question is, how can we build a bigger or a better data landscape, right? So my company, CloudMile, actually has worked with multiple organizations to help them manage their data, even though they have multiple sources and subsystems, right? One of the questions that my customer usually comes to me is, hey, Jeremy, how do I centralize my data, right? So what we do is that we actually share with them, there are technologies out there that could help them to basically store data that are structured and unstructured on the cloud. And we go through a ETL and a data warehouse process, and we basically build machine learning models for them, right? Now, what some of the machine learning models that you think of? The two very high components that basically, or the two most common data analytics tools that people leverage on is data analytics and computer vision. Data purely using for data, and computer vision is basically using imagery, data, or video footages to help build intelligence, right? So some of the use cases that we have, for example, in terms of data analytics, is building design consideration. So for example, WeWork actually uses data to help them understand what are some of the most common company sizes who leverage on their shared office spaces, and basically help to build buildings, right, or office spaces that fits all these different, I would say, office or company sizes. Data analytics is also used in project management to help prioritize risk as we move along in terms of the project. Computer vision is also used for, detection and safety entry system, and also for construction site monitoring, right? So just to sort of end off and summarize what basically computer vision can do for you, right? I think as most of you are practitioners within the construction industry, right? The Singapore government, due to COVID-19, has basically said, hey, you guys can start your construction services again on 2nd June, right? So the question to you is, what can you do to help make sure that you have a safe environment, and not just only for COVID-19, but to protect all the construction workers within your construction site, right? So I have just 3 very quick summary. The first one is basically leveraging on sensors and also using facial recognition technology to help take attendance of the people, or basically your construction people who come to work every day, to help monitor, right, their temperature, and keep track and monitor this in a contactless, I would say, manner. So this is a very fast and seamless approach on how you can basically help to protect your people within the construction site, right? And another one is using sort of object detection to help people understand, right? You see, to make sure that either safety distance is being met, not only just in terms of workplace, right? So, for example, also this object detection can detect, I would say, heavy machineries. So if someone is operating a heavy machinery and a construction worker is going too close or not within the safety distance, alarms can be alerted to the safety officer or to the project managers to basically stop the person from going too near the heavy machinery, right? So if you take a look at basically the red lines that is present, let me just quickly pause. Right, if you see the red lines that is over there, it basically helps alert people on basically the safety distance that needs to be met. And object detection can also help to make sure that everybody has their protection gear on, right? Like who is not wearing a helmet. These are some of the things that can also be detected. Okay, and the last but not least are basically tracking people within the construction site itself, right? So if you see this last sort of video that I'm playing, you can see with the use of UWC or RFID tags, right? Workers can be sort of detected even indoors on where they have moved during their time on working at the site itself. So you must be wondering, right? Adopting all this technology sometimes can be quite expensive. So just to end it off, right? These are all basically something that the Singapore government can help to fund through the productivity solution grants, right? So if any of you are basically interested in adopting any of this cloud technology that I've spoke about today, or I would say machine learning, facial recognition, feel free to contact me. You can take a screenshot of this colorful name card that I've prepared, right? And you can contact me after this session through email or through my mobile phone. So again, thank you everyone for your attention, and off to the next section of today's session. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. I will hand over to Professor Jensen to help us to moderate the panel discussion. So if there's any questions relating to the three speakers, we can carry on the panel discussion. I'll hand it over to you, Professor Jensen.
Thanks a lot. So can I just clarify, how would you like to do this? You would like all the questions to be on the chat, or do you like people to switch on their microphone and ask a question?
I think it's more efficient if they put a question on the chat as opposed to, then let the speakers.
Okay. And so I think, but maybe I can just say a few words. I think the three presentations have been very interesting and completely different perspectives on this the same topic. But I think it's very interesting to look at the connections between these presentations. So I think when you look at Ping Lei's presentation, which went into quite a bit of detail about writing a specific script, and then you look at the cloud presentation, you realize that there's an opportunity there for, if people in offices write scripts and those scripts just sit on their computer, it's very limited the impact it will have in that office. Whereas if those scripts can be deployed onto a cloud platform, and then that cloud platform is only accessible to the intranet of the office, then suddenly the whole office can start using those scripts. And we saw from the Autodesk side, they are already offering some of those possibilities to publish scripts, but of course with the Autodesk ecosystem, those scripts will only work in Autodesk tools, but it's already going in that direction. I think Autodesk also have Autodesk Forge, which is a platform where you can do this kind of thing, where you can publish scripts. So I think there's lots of interesting. It would be interesting to hear some questions from the floor. Any questions at all, but I'm particularly interested also in trying to make some connections between these presentations to see how we could join the dots. So at the moment, I don't see any questions yet. Let me see. So if there's no questions yet, maybe I can start by asking about Autodesk Forge. that wasn't covered in the Autodesk presentation. Could you explain maybe a little bit what's the Autodesk Forge platform about? Because that kind of covers, I think Autodesk Forge kind of connects the three presentations. A cloud-based platform where you can develop scripts and upload them for others to use.
Thanks, Patrick, for the question. So Forge is actually a set of different web APIs. So that is the Forge platform. So if, let's say, if you have a background in terms of JavaScript programming or Node.js, it is a way where you could actually create your own web application where you can harness these different sets of web APIs from Forge. And if there's any exposed web APIs, let's say from Microsoft or, for example, like tools like Power BI, you can marry all of these exposed APIs with your own web application. So in Forge, you are actually developing your own set of web APIs or web applications, rather.
So in Forge, do would you envisage that, as an example, Pinglei's script could be developed within Forge and then offered with a simple user interface to the rest of the office?
Yes. Okay. So maybe just to give some context of how it works, maybe I can just show an example of that. A second. So when you go to the Forge website, let me just quickly share my screen. Monitor 2. There we go. So this is the Forge, one of the Forge web services that was developed. So if, let's say, if you want to harness the models that was uploaded within BIM 360 and you want to integrate it, for example, with SAP or, let's say, Power BI, you can actually marry these two web APIs in one interface. So in a nutshell, what we provide with Forge are actually a total of 6 to 8 services. Within Autodesk Forge, this is where all the different APIs that we expose. It could be design automation. It could be the web viewer that we have in our BIM 360. So we have our authentication. So these are the different types of APIs that we expose through the web. So if you want to develop your own custom applications such as this, as for example, like the example from CPG, you can actually do the analysis directly if that file has been uploaded in BIM 360. So if, let's say, if you have a working Python script, then you can actually link this up with Autodesk Forge so that whenever you, for example, if you have a model that was uploaded in BIM 360, then you can harness those models from BIM 360. Does that answer the question?
All right, I had my microphone. Yes, that's great, thanks. Of course, with the Autodesk Forge platform, it's focusing on Autodesk tools, so the Rhino script, of course, wouldn't be possible, but something similar could be created with the Autodesk tool. I think we also have now one question from Gerard about generative design. So the question is, does Autodesk generative design come preloaded with the Dynamo definitions to run optimizations?
Okay, that's a great question, Gerard. So when you install Revit 2021, generative design is preloaded already. It comes with 3 sample studies that you can actually use as a reference. So those comes with the Revit 2021 release. So if let's say if you need to have your own set of workflows that you would like to automate with Revit, then you still have to build that in Dynamo in order to use that in generative design.
Okay, thank you. So we have another question. Please, any advice on how to move on with this computational BIM community of practice? This is a very general question from Pong. So any advice on how to create a community of practice? Shall we ask Pingley? Maybe Pingley, you could answer this, comment on this one.
Okay, thanks for the question. And yeah, I mean, matter of fact, I mean, in CPG, we also do have a COP, which is also short for Community of Practice. Is comprised of 3%. And I think the moving forward is to encourage young architects, young engineers to adopt, to learn to how to use the software, and probably to have a try on Dynamo and probably Python scripting, so they can participate. But you know, the people like us, the millennials, we come and go. So it's really to how to keep the pool of people in place, and through interaction and day-to-day collaboration, then you can build up the community, because the community has to be a fixed number of people. That's the first thing. I think to target on, you identify the people, which is the talents who can use it. And if you notice, right, I mean, in the industry, rather in practice, there are less of those. We have fewer and fewer drafters or BIM modelers. It's actually probably all the architects, engineers to draft and model by themselves. So it actually is beneficial, and I would say it's a good sign that more people will actually pick up the skill sets. That is just based on observation only. But in terms of advice, I think you should encourage the education, probably from the university, since the university time, because that's when you the undergraduate have the plenty of time to explore, to learn new things. And matter of fact, I mean, just I think it's an open secret that I'm when I was in NUS, I was a student of Patrick Jensen, Dr. Patrick Jensen. That's when I picked up the computational design, and yeah, now it's actually going trendy, computational BIM. So with a good teacher, I would say teacher, it also helps to spark the interest as well. Yeah.
Great, Pingley. Good answer. I mean, I think the question of community practice is also a question of you know, what we should expect. I think we shouldn't be expecting that everybody in the office is going to learn Python. So I think one of the key questions again is, how do the people in the office who do have these skills publish their scripts and models so that the rest of the office can benefit? I think this is always an ongoing question. Maybe I can bring in Jeremy on this question. So I think in terms of cloud platforms, I mean, the issue of cloud, of course, is a sort of whether or not to use cloud is not a kind of question that really you have any choice in answering, because we all use the cloud whether we like it or not. I mean, we're using the cloud right now in this conversation, and we use it when we send a WhatsApp message, and we use it when we send a file with WeTransfer. So my question with the cloud approach is that, so you can use the cloud as a kind of web services that are very kind of translucent. Well, you know, you're not really aware even that you're using the cloud, but it's all happening in the cloud, versus an office investing in their own AWS, Amazon AWS infrastructure, and setting up their own infrastructure. There are many kind of flavors of this. Can you comment on you know, the different places where people could enter into cloud infrastructure?
Yes, yeah. So I think as you have rightly, you know, sort of pointed out, right, Patrick, is that, you know, cloud is really, whether we like it or not, is sort of in our day-to-day life, right? And the best example that I always share with people is that, you know, when you buy your first smartphone, you are essentially already entering into cloud. So for example, right, like when you buy an iPhone and you change over to a Samsung, right, you realize that by just entering your email address or setting up a new Apple account or Android account, all your contacts get synchronized back onto your new phone, right? So that's cloud perspective is very much day to day for us. Now, but when do people start to enter and sort of consider, right? Hey, is this a good time for us to enter into cloud? I think I personally feel that there is no better time than now to sort of look at visiting into cloud. I think with the whole COVID situation, you know, that everyone is sort of stuck at home, and I have really, you know, customers, whether is it a construction or not construction industry, all sort of rushing the last minute to sort of reaching out to me and say, hey, could you set up this account, that account for me to help us with our business continuity, right? So I think with this sort of low down period where, you know, we are forced to sort of stay at home, I think it's a very good chance for us to relook at how adopting cloud can help with our business. And in relation to the construction industry, right, I would say the construction customers that I've always worked with, they have adopted cloud for the very simple purpose as wanting to start it with their entire sort of sales process, from, you know, submitting all the different documents, licenses, I would say reports and proposals, right? And then they realize that, hey, why not let's adopt cloud for our day-to-day construction coordination as well, right? Because like I mentioned, number one, it's easy for everybody to basically coordinate within a single platform. And number two, all documents are being tracked centrally. So I would say a very good start is within sort of your day-to-day operation and sales part, and then see how you can sort of extend that into your day-to-day, I would say, work.
Okay, great. That's a good summary. We've got another question here from Ding Yi. I like this question very much. Is how prevalent is the usage of computational BIM in industry right now? This is one of those tough questions. You know, what is the reality of computational BIM? Perhaps John Rivas, maybe you'd like to, and then maybe Ping Lei, maybe like to comment as well, but maybe first John.
Yeah, I think what is important, we've seen a number of customers who are already embarking on computational BIM. Every practice or every company uses it differently. So my suggestion to you is that you could actually start what is the use cases. This is my common advice to any individual or organization who would like to actually embark on computational BIM, is for you to understand what are the use cases or what are the things that you wish to actually automate in your workflows, whether it's going to be conceptual design or detailed documentation, because that is the starting piece to find out, okay, how should I do it in Dynamo? So that is the next question. So we have seen a lot of companies has already using this. There are some advanced ones like Ping Lei from CPG and some folks from Surbana. They are actually very advanced Dynamo users, or I would say Python users. So my advice to you, understand what are the key workflows that you would like to develop, and then from there you can start learning on how to pick up Dynamo or other computational BIM platforms.
And Ping Lei, you have a comment on this one?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I think I can feel that because there's a keywords SME there, small medium enterprise. But I would like to point out that the fact is that computational BIM is more implemented like a bottom-up initiatives. We always start with a bunch of people, a handful of people. So, I mean, the size of the company, sometimes it doesn't matter. And the advantage of SME is that you probably don't have the very tedious IT policies, I hope. So the implementation could be easier in contrary. So, and yeah, so in terms of a prevalence, right, if I'm speaking from consultant designers, we already see from some demonstration that we can use computational BIM to some form-driven designs to come up with fanciful design, and in the design you can actually validate your design using computational means in running to check the headroom, like shown in John's presentation. Probably you can also check the fire safety setback. Anything you can quantify, that derive into a figure to check the performance, then you can use computational BIM to validate design or rather to improve upon your design. And not to mention, if from consultant's point of view, you can use the computational BIM to measure in terms of quantity. So it will have a very benefit effect on QS, quantity surveyors. And yeah, so I do see all the benefits up to tender calling. Maybe in construction, you can even think of how you can check your model about some temporary works, but there's also still constraint in the 3D design or digital medium.
Yes.
But that possibly can be further explored. But I think it's very prevalent as of now. I mean, especially so.
So I think because the question really was, I think the question was asking actually how many people, if you look at the industry, how many people, what percentage of offices will, in an office, how many people in your office are programming? And probably the answer is pretty small. And I think that's maybe the way it should be. I mean, I don't know whether we want all architects to suddenly become programmers. The problem, I think, is maybe, again, more to do with not that the number is small, but that the impact is limited in terms of sharing these scripts and sharing this work. It always ends up being quite limited. But I think, Pingley, your comment about the SME, I think is also, I think, right, is that sometimes the most advanced offices are the small ones, not the big ones. So I think the small ones can leverage this technology to actually punch above their weight. So we have another couple of questions. We have Alvin's asked a question specifically about the temperature tracking. Obviously, people are thinking about the COVID situation and they need to implement some things fast. So he's asking, how fast can we deploy this once it's confirmed? And is it in-house? Is the tracking solution in-house?
Yeah. So this is actually my company is actually the official sort of distributor for this tracking, temperature tracking and facial recognition solution. So typically, because there's hardware involved, sensor and monitors, it takes about 2 weeks for the product to come into Singapore. But when the hardware is in Singapore, it takes about only a day or two to basically set it up.
All right.
Yeah.
So that's pretty fast. And
Yes.
then, so we have another question also for Jeremy this time. For John Rivas about Autodesk Forge. So does the API for Dynamo models include, does the API include Dynamo modeling and parametric modeling?
What you could do is right now you can create some webhooks, but I haven't seen much examples on how it's being integrated. But Forge actually supports Python programming as well. So let's say if you have developed something in Python, you can export it out and then integrate it with Forge.
But my understanding of Forge is that it does have the full 3D modeling API. So you can call all the modeling functions and different kinds of 3D functions. Is that correct?
Yeah, right. It does have those functionalities as well. Yeah.
Okay, we have another question coming up. That was just a comment about from Jeremy, just giving his contact details. And so any more questions from the floor? So how are we doing for time at the moment? We are at 5:44. Can I just check what the situation is with time?
We're supposed to end at 5:45.
Ah.
Survey completed. I suppose we can run another 5 more minutes for questions.
Yes.
Any more questions?
So we have a question from James, who says, we rely very much on third-party vendors when going on digitalization in construction. Who should take care of the security and integrity of the information in the cloud? And I think, yeah, this is a difficult question about, at the end of the day, who's responsible for ensuring that this stuff is safe?
Yeah, maybe I'll just put a comment here.
Yeah.
Yep. So for our cloud applications, we actually we make sure that we are compliant to international standards. That could be like the SOC 2 compliance and the ISO 27000 compliance. So, so to make sure that whenever our customers actually use the BIM 360 applications, we put the necessary security protocols in place so that the information that you place in there is safe. So I wouldn't say that if because once you're invited in a BIM 360 project, only those who are invited in the project actually has access to those files. So your username and password is very essential on making sure that your data is secured. So what we have in our system is that we enable like two-factor authentication to make sure that when you log in into those systems, you receive an SMS that you have to type in so that it ensures that you are the right user whenever you're using the cloud app. So those are for the BIM 360 applications.
Yes, and of course, but the responsibility is still on the office, of course, to take care, to manage those, to manage the users and the passwords and all that, which can become quite complicated when there's a large number of people collaborating on a project. Any comment from Jeremy on that one?
I think John has sort of summarized it very well. Yeah. So from a public cloud perspective, right, generally there are authentication approaches that's put in place. But, sometimes I think customers don't really like to hear what they want to hear, right? So at the end of the day, because the data is being owned by the customers and public cloud people do not have access into their databases, right? So at the end of the day, while enterprise sort of solution or security solution can be wrapped around a public cloud, customers themselves would also need to make sure that proper security measures are in place to make sure that the data is being kept safe and who needs to access them is also being complied to. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the other point, of course, being worth making is that, and I think one of you made it already before, is that, the question is also how secure is the data that sits on an office computer that hasn't been updated for 3 years and has various vulnerabilities on it. The fact that it's on the cloud doesn't necessarily make it more risky. It might make it less risky at the end of the day. So that is the reality of having hundreds of computers in an office and keeping them all up to date and all the software patches installed is a lot of work. So do we have any other questions from the floor?
Patrick, I'll just make a comment. If anyone has any questions, I'll just leave my email address here. You can just feel free to reach out. For those, if you have any burning questions regarding to any of what I've presented today.
That's great. Thanks. So I think we're 5 minutes over. So if no one has any other burning questions, then maybe this is a good point to close the discussion.
All right. Thank you, John, Patrick. Pingley and Jeremy as well. So survey, we really need your feedback so that we can organize topics that you are interested in. So on behalf of BCA Pong and myself, Chris from Singapore Poly, thank you for attending this session. We'll see you again in a month's time. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Stay safe and healthy. Bye-bye.
Bye. You too. Stay safe too.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Good weekend.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris.